Hi there. My name is Rachel Martins, I guess would be the first thing to discuss. I'm mom to a 10-year-old little boy named Luke, who has been quite an entertaining experience, the journey into motherhood. He was born with a very rare chromosome disorder called mosaic trisomy 22. As far as I know, he's the only child in Alberta with it, and so it's been, well, I guess really to start off, a lot of the things to discuss would be how when you're given a diagnosis and stuff like that, where does one exactly begin? I was given a stack of medical journals, and they basically said at the end of the day, you're probably going to know more about it than I will, and good luck with your life. And then you kind of go from there. And I'm going to actually pause this for a second because apparently we are having issue. Okie dokie. Well, to keep going, I guess some of the things that I've had brought into my life due to my experiences with. Oh, and here's another brief pause here. Okay. Well, some of the things that have been brought through my experiences as a parent of a child with special needs have been entirely pretty much brought on my own and through social media. Uh, one of the main ones being the fact that I got myself connected with McMaster University just through sheer willingness and through social media. I started working with them and through their organization called CanChild, which is their research arm for the concept of disability. They talk about child development and whatnot, things like that. And through that, we actually work towards publishing, and shall be published officially soon, actual paper, which is really cool. The whole concept being is sharing your story and how empathy can help create a better relationship and impact research on a better level. Basically, all the things that I go through in my life and through various other people in this group, we discuss just the sheer reality, because there's this giant disconnect between professionals and through parents a lot of the time in terms of what we see are needs and very necessary things to continue research on, to what compared to what researchers who probably aren't parents of special needs children, they have an entirely different idea. And so we're in a really exciting time when it comes to really improving situation, not only for ourselves, but for parents of special needs children in the future. And through all of these experiences that I've come to, I guess, accumulate, it's been my own real sense of self-discovery, in the sense that I really want to help you as parents become better people, and to really kind of appreciate the journey a lot more, because we tend to find the concept overwhelming sometimes. We're basically left to write our own story, our own manual in terms of what being a special needs parent is all about. And while that is a luxury in many ways, it's also ways that we can improve upon it. I mean, even as just basic human beings, we can always improve who we are. Basically, if there's any things through this discussion that you would like to bring up, this is my first time with Google Hangouts, so if you can seek out a way in order to ask a question or to make a comment, please do. Even if you post later on the event page and stuff like that, I will do my best to discuss things further, whatever points you wish to reach. I basically want this to be a little less of me just yapping away, slightly sleep deprived, to a point where I can help people on their way as well too. Today, I want to talk about special needs parenting. We're a vastly diverse crew, and that can have its ups and downs in a lot of respects. Some of us have higher functioning kids, some of us have lower functioning kids. Kids who are medically complex, kids who just need a little bit of a hand along the way in education and things like that. With that in mind, it can also really mess with our perspectives at times, as we see our Facebook mom friends, their kids reach milestones, and yet we sit on the sidelines waiting for something else to happen. In this kind of generation where we the Pinterest, Instagram world, we try to bring a good light to what we experience as parents and stuff like that. But on the same end as well too, it is a slightly altered perspective in social media as to what we go through, and through that as well too, we're really seeking to be vulnerable, but in a way that helps us to kind of assess who we are in stability and stuff like that. And so as we continue to seek ourselves, who we are, and kind of find some strength as parents, I'd just love to share a little bit of wisdom as to what's helped me along the way. Like, no claim to motherhood perfection, but there's definitely a few dynamics that make me feel as though I'm making things work. Even despite the fact, you know, my 10-year-old is 1 in 30,000 to 50,000 chance of him actually remaining alive. It's luck in some ways, but on the same end as well too, it's sheer drive that I feel like has really brought us to the fact that I'm going to be celebrating his 10th birthday come the end of August, for which we're very excited about. In a lot of ways as well too, a lot of these points have helped me to build a professional reputation in terms of like not only improving things upon my own life, things with my son's care, on many different levels, but we'll continue to dig into that. But discussing what I initially talked about was expectations. One of my part-time mom jobs that I had before I moved to Alberta was working for a kids boutique. They had 2 separate store locations. One was a baby store, and one was a toddler/kids store. And now I worked at the kids store, not the baby store. So comparatively, when it came to the incomes that kind of came, the sales that came on both stores, essentially, the baby store always had like 5 times more of a sales bracket. They always did way better than we did. And we always considered it the notion of it, when you're working at a baby store, you're selling the dream. You know, you're excited about pregnancy, you need this, that, and the other thing. You just can't live without this specific product. And there's always 10 other people who will tell you how I did that with my 5th, 4th, and the 3rd child or whatnot. But and when it comes to the kids store, it's always the kind of bleary-eyed look of how much is this going to set me back financially, whatever it be, clothes or be it toys and things like that. We're set up for expectation throughout so many stages of life, and exactly what that looks like in the special needs parenting world, there's many different facets to that. Some of them being the notion of the expectations we have on ourselves. We have the base mom responsibilities, the changing diapers, the nighttime feedings and stuff like that. We have the expectations that are put on us through teachers, through specialists, through therapists and whatnot, occupational physio, this, that. I find even too, sometimes when it comes to the clinical terminology, it presents a very high expectation as well too. Mainly being things like early intervention. Great concept, and of course with young minds, the idea of neuroplasticity, the moldable mind, essentially, it does play a big part in it. But also too, I think that sometimes presents a bit of anxiety that if we don't get these milestones down now, that it's just never going to happen, and the life is just going to be just a disappointment essentially. But but really that's a term in the concept of expectations where we need to kind of leave that aside. We use it for what it is, and that is that early push, but to not let that be the only time where to dictate what the rest of life is going to look like. Grace and self-forgiveness are two things that the concept of expectation we need to really be able to afford ourselves too. One of them being to divvy up your life in terms of the fact that you are allowed to screw up every so often. One thing that I adopted through a class that I took not too long ago was the fact that I feel like I'm a good parent 80% of the time and not so great 20% of the time. And so when I do have those rotten days, you can say to yourself, hey, it's okay. I'm just in my 20. Tomorrow I'm going to be in my 80. And to be able to essentially let that go and keep moving forward, essentially. We really to let go of that sense of expectation when it comes to really, a lot of us in the beginning are introduced to that poem, Welcome to Holland. And for those of you who might not have come across that one, essentially it's you're planning a trip to Italy, you're super excited, you learn the language, and then all of a sudden you get on the plane and you realize you took the wrong plane. You are in an entirely different country, entirely different culture, you don't speak the language, you don't know what's going on. So comparatively, you're working with that disappointment of not being in Italy like you plan to, but you're in Holland and you're working towards, can I still have an okay trip here? Is there cool things in Holland? Can I learn the language? And the fact that there is a sense of real innate beauty in being in Holland overall. And in that sense of expectation that we have in ourselves, we also, I mean, we live in a model of scarcity, really, that there's always never enough time to, well, never blank enough, and there's never enough blank, essentially. You fill in the blank yourself. I imagine that there's always something in your mind that you could fill that with. To live in a model of scarcity means that we're never, ever going to live up to our own expectations. We're never going to be able to fulfill that giant list that we have in our minds. Sometimes it's okay to do one or two of the things, and sometimes it's okay to give yourself enough grace to not do any of those things at all. But those expectations we have on ourselves do need to shift in the fact that we can be okay if we don't do all of those things. Really, in order to live up to all of these expectations, not only from ourselves, but for that other people have on us as we live through all these experiences as parents. I had an occupational therapist one time tell me that I need to kind of stop looking at this as a constant therapeutic model. I was working towards studying occupational therapy and things like that. I was great with the terms, and she was trying to remind me of the fact that at the end of the day, number one, my priority is I'm mom and he's my child. And to live and build from that can even more effectively, organically make the best kind of therapy. Going to the pool, going to the park, these are learning experiences too. Even the fact of just hugging your child is a form of sensory therapy. And when we forget the technical end of things and just live, you are giving yourself so much more grace to see just the beauty and to see just to see those milestones kind of come their own in their own time, really. Essentially, I was very fortunate to discover my son after a year of practicing. He's a seasoned bum scooter, almost 10 years old, and basically we've been practicing for a year the notion that he can go down the stairs on his own, but he can't go up the stairs on his own. And he actually decided yesterday that it's time. I'm going up the stairs on my own. And mind you, he has a bit of a short attention span to the concept, but he in those organic moments when they suddenly decide and that light switches on, you both are really emotionally fed. He sees that concept of self-accomplishment, and you just have the joy of seeing a little bit of more freedom in their lives that they never had before. Essentially, when you let go and of the technical stuff and bring it back to the organic experiences, you're looking at a pretty effective therapy concept. I don't know if you've ever heard of the concept of DIR, or floor time therapy. If you're ever looking for the book, it's actually, the author's name is Stanley Greenspan. It's a bit of a tough read, but the overall concept is that every interaction that we have in life is effectively in chains, linked together, essentially. So Google Hangouts wouldn't exactly be the best thing, but if I were to be sitting and having coffee with you right now, the back and forth that we would have, my response and then your response back and forth, would be essentially chains within a conversation. And in order to accomplish greater milestones, you want to bring more links to the chain, in whatever case that may be. Even with playing ball with a child, me holding it and pushing it away, that's one chain. Them holding it could be one. Them pushing it back to you is another chain. These relationship steps essentially work towards what Greenspan says is a regression from the basic milestones that many special needs children miss in life, and that we can just build onto those, and you'll find that things will start to develop essentially from there. And basically, the expectation upon ourselves, and the expectation we get from other people as well too, really helps us to realize the concept that we parent in a very different fashion than what, well, for lack of a better phrase, conventional parents tend to be. You have mom, you have dad, maybe some grandparents, but primarily, or even single parents, essentially, there is two people or one person who is in the driver's seat, essentially, when it comes to the parenting role. When that comes to be the case, and especially with a child with special needs, you tend to co-parent with several other forces through child development. Vulnerability is not, I think, a strong point that we all really enjoy by any means. Overall, things like, well, I mean, it takes a lot to put yourself out there as a special needs parent. There's a demand for your child to be kind of in this community of support. You remain in the driver's seat, but the support demands you to be vulnerable, like I said. And vulnerability equals risk, and vulnerability equals uncertainty, and the risk of exposure as well too. Basically, in these circles that we look for support, if you can imagine the idea of an arena. And when I think of an arena, the first thing that pops into my mind is like the Roman Colosseum. And if you can imagine just this grand structure with which you are plopped right in the middle. And when it comes to that arena, being in an entirely huge structure all by yourself demands the concept of being entirely vulnerable in this huge, intimidating building of sorts. There are many different types of seats that come in this arena. The cheap seats is one of them, and those tend to be people, this is your audience, essentially, these different types of seats. Cheap seats tend to be the people who don't know your life, but just love to criticize. Then there are the box seats, and those tend to be the people who are the authority figures, who stand up on high, can tend to be inaccessible at times. And the empathy seat tends to be your cheering squad, as well as the self-compassion seat. And it's basically, that's the seat for you while you're watching yourself do these things. It's because the risk of failing is really better than the risk of not trying at all. Now, all of these seats that you have in this arena of vulnerability, this could be really any sort of arena, be it going to an occupational therapy appointment, the IPP meeting, doctor's appointments. You can imagine these, and I would love to hear on the Facebook page what your arenas are, the things that make you most nervous about being vulnerable as a special needs parent. Please feel free to type that onto the events page, or we can discuss that further in any avenue you would like as well too. But with these seats, really at the end of the day, it comes with a manner of self-assessment. You need to be able to figure out who deserves to be in those seats. Some of them, of course, can't be helped, but you can increase the numbers. In certain sections, you can decrease the numbers. A lot of the times, basically, what this entire point kind of comes down to is the fact that despite the fact that you are vulnerable, you still remain within the driver's seat. And one of the things that I think that a lot of moms are sorely lacking is the idea that we as moms have rights, as I guess patients and as caregivers as well too. And in these arenas, we can often meet a wide range of professionals. Some of them are good. Some of us have fantastical stories of how the heck did these people get degrees. I liken a lot of these appointments that we go to as essentially dating on Tinder or whatever, I guess you could say. It's this concept of, gee, I hope this person gets me. I hope I can have decent conversations with them. I hope that they'll hear my side. I hope I can effectively listen to their side, and I hope that we can just get each other. And so when that dating concept doesn't work, you got to really kind of have that mindset that sometimes if you've put, as long as you've put enough effort in yourself, sometimes it's time to move on. And a lot of times that can be afforded, that opportunity, be it going above to leadership, to step up and things like that. You are also within your rights with these people to say no. You can ask for a citation when it comes to therapy. Sometimes things are controversial, whether or not this is going to be effective. Is this the best route for my child? And sometimes it's just better to work from a fresh set of eyes. Considering the fact that my son has lived as long as he has with his diagnosis, many people tend to come in with different expectations as to who he is. If you Google mosaic trisomy 22, which is his primary diagnosis, you'll find often a very grim perspective. And so a lot of times people are waiting for him to die. It's really sad to say, but it's true. Sometimes people have complete misconceptions as to what his diagnosis is. For the first few years of his life, his medical file actually says that he has Down syndrome, which he totally does not. But that's just as much as a professional is willing to listen to. They hear it and then they write it down completely wrong. But in a lot of ways, what took a large part of my parenting journey was the idea that I wasn't content with the way the system was working. I wasn't content with the treatment of my child. I'm more than self-aware of the fact that as many years as he's lived have been an absolute gift, and in some ways a lot of luck, in some ways a lot of work. And I can accept the fact that there's a good chance that he will pass away and I will outlive him. But on the same end as well too, I had to wait out technology. I had to wait out understanding. It's funny, this idea of disability and how much it's come in transition. I was actually learning today that it wasn't until 1982 that our kids actually became registered persons with rights in Canada. Now, in research years where things tend to work on a very slow basis, that's like a blink in the eye. That's like talking about something I did last week. And from there, now the fact that they are registered human beings in the eyes of the Canadian government, we have a lot more work to do, essentially. And the separation that we have between ourselves and professionals, though it is exhausting at times, we need to figure out a better relationship. Well, that's essentially what kind of came out of this paper that we're working on through McMaster University, and that is that basically there needs to be some social empathy. There needs to be less of a power struggle. There needs to be this idea. We have this idea in our minds that going to the doctor, I don't know, if I were to think about how we regard that idea, it comes with some pretty diverse points of view, which kind of fascinates me in the parenting world. But it's this idea that, like, there are some families who go in to see a doctor with the slightest fever. Then there's those who are willing to wait a little bit longer. I mean, we all come from different perspectives. Not that anyone's doing anything wrong, mind you, on either end of it. But how is that working out with your relationship with your current doctor? And these are the things we need to build upon. And if I'm ever finding myself, when it comes to finding my rights as a parent and my ideas as what it means to be a parent impacted, it sounds really, really hokey and housewifey, but I'll tell you, it's one of the greatest equalizers I've ever come across. When in doubt, talking to a therapist or to a doctor or to a teacher, bring baking. It helps. Chocolate brownies, whatever, it floats your boat, essentially. There's a social component when it comes to food that helps bring expectations just to ground level, where you can actually have a sense of comfort and be able to have a proper back and forth. Basically, with this relationship as it is in development, there are so many opportunities with which we actually can get involved and make it better. And it's not just making a petition on change.org. There are many organizations, even locally, especially in Alberta. One great organization that has been very open to actually having conversations on my own has been the O'Brien Public Institute for Health. In terms of shifting the perspective of doctors and saying, hey, I actually would love to see things work a little bit for the better on this subject. What do you think? As a mom, this is what I see. And they are eager and are more than willing to eat this stuff up in order to make things better. Do try to work with that, essentially. It's probably one of the greatest gifts I think that we can give to ourselves in the idea of being able to pay back, to give back, essentially. But also as well, too, you're looking to, I guess, change the status quo, because if there's anything that's going to get crap done, it's a mom. When it comes to talking about all this work and establishing relationships and baking, I guess the overall question would be why? It's because really you have enough respect for yourself and for other people's journeys to know that you and your kids and other people's future kids really demand a better future. And that begs to be changed. We need to keep going. We need to see things on a deeper level. But and I really honestly have faith that we can really be that change that we do want to see in the world. And because you have that idea of self-respect, the fact that you realize that things can be better, and in a realistic sense, sometimes we do feel like the whole idea is overwhelming, and sometimes, yeah, it sucks. It's not. There are aspects of this parenting world that are just realities that can't be changed. But to steep yourself in the reality of the things that can effectively be changed, you need to also have respect for yourself, really, as well, too, in the sense that you're not Superwoman. You're a woman basically who has a unique set of values. You're a woman with a unique set of priorities. And because you are also in this arena of vulnerability, knowing who you are in this situation and what you value um, is going to essentially dictate who is sitting in the seats in your arena. Uh, one of the bigger things that has become a way to respect myself in certain situations where there is kind of that imbalance of power, be it professionals and myself. I've learned to rearrange my language in terms of how I express my needs to whatever arena I'm currently in. One of my biggest arenas as of late has been with my son and constant aspiration pneumonia. And after 2 years of inpatient stays and rushing to the ER, trips to the trauma room, and thoughts that we were going to lose him at one point or another, I sat down while my husband was getting my son stabilized with a nurse and said, as a parent, can I just say right off the hop, I am exhausted. I am tired. I am out of ideas. Something here needs to change, and we need to have a conversation. That's the key word here. We need to have a conversation to build things in a better fashion. We need to see if there's a game plan. We need to see if there's any feasible options out there given this specific set of circumstances with which we can avoid this constant battle with which has been basically wasting most of my emotions away, essentially, and robbing me of a lot of sleep, really. Another thing as well too ends up being, as you're sitting in the hospital rooms for a hospital stay, and you're sitting there for a hospital stay, and doctors go for specific rounds. They my apologies here. This lack of sleep thing can be quite fun, but anyways, as doctors go through rounds and they talk about medical history and whatnot, I sometimes find that I'm not actually in the conversation, and you're kind of like, you're realizing that people are making decisions like, maybe I should be able to weigh in here. Finally, it was something with which I demanded the idea that as a mom, primarily at the end of the day, I need to be able to walk away and take this child home and be able to have a full grasp of what's going on. I need to be the one to take care of whatever situation this may be. If I could please be able to be weighing in on this conversation and not feel like I'm set apart, that would be wonderful. And they were certainly happy enough to let me be a part of things. Another aspect of this concept of self-respect as well too ends up being that you need to be able to reach out to your community, which sometimes you just feel like you just wish that all of the people in your life had ESP and they would just go do the things that you want them to do. So it's not only the idea of the being vulnerable and asking for people for help that can be intimidating, but it's also the concept of really just the energy that it takes to process some of these things sometimes. One thing that can actually make the idea a lot more feasible tends to be the idea of spoon theory. Now, if you haven't heard of spoon theory before, it's the idea that everything that you do in life, essentially, consider yourself, you have a kitchen jar that's got a bunch of spoons, and each spoon is a unit of energy. Now, each unit of energy is entirely subjective in terms of what your life dictates. Taking a shower might be 4 spoons. Cooking dinner might be 3 spoons. You might only have 25 spoons in your day of energy, and you want to be able to find a way to balance out not having to waste all of your spoons before the end of the day. And if you have that loss of spoons, then essentially you're completely done. And so in order to express to family members, to friends, when you are really truly needing a helping hand, to tell them that you are out of spoons can actually make quite an accessible way for them to understand that maybe someone needs to pop over, maybe someone needs to vacuum whilst you go take a nap, or watch your child while they watch a movie so you can go take a nap. I feel like a nap is a common occurrence here in my conversation, but it's definitely helped my family as well too, just to see it's hard when you want you're naturally driven to feel like everyone needs ESP. They just need to be able to read what you need and just to be done. But that's just not how things work. But if you can bring that energy level down to something simple like a spoon theory, you're going to find a lot more successful days, and to be able to build your community a lot better. As well too, in terms of self-respect, sometimes too, that finding your community needs to be a matter of balancing your priorities, as not everybody is worth that time and that very valuable energy of yours. If you can imagine the concept that trust in other people is a marble jar. A lot of studies have been done in the idea that for trust, it's the things that resonate with people more aren't grand gestures, but the little things. These are the things that resonate most, and all of these little things accumulate in terms of how full a person's marble jar is. And if a person doesn't bring enough marbles into your life, sometimes it's better to shift your priorities and to kind of seek out a tribe of people who are your marble jar friends. So if you're looking to evaluate who you do have in your life, ask yourself if this person is a marble jar friend. Chances are there'll be someone who is more than willing to be on your side and to be in those arena seats that are your cheering squad. Basically, those who aren't marble jar friends, it can be difficult at times, because we do lose friends because they don't understand exactly what we go through. But also as well too, we tend to not be able to express sometimes what our expectations are, and then those friends do walk away. But those who do stick around, are they ones who have earned the right to your story? This is another aspect of self-respect in terms of how to build your life in a more successful fashion as a special needs parent. You, by virtue of being a human being that exists, really, that's essentially what counts. That's the basis of this all, is that if you're not filling yourself up as well too, filling your marble jar with little things as well too, then you're just not respecting yourself. Now, when it comes to the time for that, I think we need to have a lot of grace to be able to say that this is something that is deserving, this is something that's necessary. I wasn't a marble jar friend to myself at one point in my life. I had many people through work or friends and stuff like that who got looking at me physically, and they said that it looked like my neck was a little odd looking, like unusually large. And I kept putting them off. I had too many things to do. I had too many doctors to see. And then finally, one summer I was having a particularly difficult time breathing. Took myself to a walk-in, and he took one look at me and he said, I think you need to be seen by someone else, because I think I actually had quite a substantial growth, goiter in my neck. So I went through the process of going through cancer care, biopsies and things like that, and was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. Now, things were caught early enough where I didn't end up having to require treatment, but on the same end as well too, it was enough to scare me into saying that I need to take some time. I need to take time for me. I need to, if I'm not going to take time for me, I'm going to be worrying a lot more about my son's future, because I won't be in it. So if there's something that got me really started in that respect, I try to have regular conversations with myself to say, am I filling my jar with marbles? Do I trust myself to have enough energy to fill for the next day? And if there is an awesome way to refill your marble jar, your own personal marble jar, it's the idea of just saying, balancing your priorities and saying, you know, do the dishes really need to be done tonight? To really stop everything and just say, you know, my house may be chaos, as you saw earlier. My sister was just leaving after coming over for dinner. But it just, the life is all the more richer when you stop with these expectations of all that's around you, and just enjoy a little something, be it just going to watch a movie on the couch, even if it's passing out on said couch. It's these are all the things with which we can these memories that are all the more energizing and more fulfilling than having a clean floor for another day. A lot of times as well too, in the idea of this journey, we have all of these feelings. We have well, I would almost say sleeplessness is a feeling. We have a lot of times patients, feelings of weakness, feelings of vulnerability, sometimes feelings of resentment and anger as well too, because of the situation or what our kids go through. I wish I had a better explanation why some kids have to fight a lot more than other kids. Sadly, that's not my place, but one thing I can say is that these feelings are an energy with which we need to channel a form of self-care. For myself, one of the greatest things that I've been able to do has been not only my experiences with social media, writing this paper with the university, but also has been working with the Rare Disease Foundation. Now, with my son's rare diagnosis, I've been working in conjunction with the genetics department. We have regular meetings. No one's really taken care of this aspect of parents before, especially with the concept of rare diseases. And to be able to open that door for better conversations has been very personally fulfilling for myself. It's been a rough couple months with my son's health, and through all of these feelings that I've accumulated, depending on what events have been going on, I love to channel this energy into positive things and make things better for others. And so I hope that you can find your outlet too. And I think that half the journey is also finding these outlets for those energies. There are definitely opportunities for patient engagement as well too, or as a caregiver as well. One way to get involved in that is talk to your pediatrician. Another way too, feel free to send me a PM on a private message on Facebook, and I'd be happy to share with you many opportunities that come especially through the hospital and family-centered care, and how to make things better for other families. Art therapy has been another thing. Now a lot of people go when it comes to art therapy, and they're saying I'm not an artist, I don't deal with these things well. But really, it's really, you don't necessarily need to be an artist. Some of the greatest messages that have come through art therapy is just putting something on paper, just as a form of self-expression. I was listening to an art therapist speak one time about a soldier that had seen just was suffering from PTSD. And he drew a picture that was basically the most rudimentary thing you could see. It was just a brick wall and a red door in the middle. And it said that the door and the wall with which I've closed are around my life. And as he was continuing on with therapy, he drew another picture that had the door slightly opened. And it was his way of saying that life was starting to open up, and that I could see through I'm beginning to be able to see through the wall that I built around myself. There's so many ways to art therapy with which so many benefits really as well too that come come about from it, be it one of the greatest things I think that's come out nowadays has been adult coloring. If you haven't taken it up, it can really sound dumb, but it's enough to stimulate the brain in order to be focused on something else. For myself as well too, I've taken up crochet, and if you ever want to learn crochet, I am your gal, happy to help you learn, because I think for myself it's the monotony, it's the counting, it's the ability to give something to somebody else as well too, always very, very beneficial. Some of the things that I've done for myself as well has been in their self-expression, really been ways to kind of channel grief, yeah, grief, rage, things like that. It really, it's all entirely subjective as to what you, whatever you're experiencing. For myself, messages through tattoos actually have been my own thing. Not everybody's cup of tea, mind you, but it's been a way for myself to really form a self-expression in terms of what exactly I'm going through. One of the things that I actually had drawn was, and you can see there's a wristwatch or a stopwatch there, and it has the time of my son's birth. And if there's something that, given the great big question mark that is my son's existence and how long he's going to be with us, for myself, it's a great reminder to say that the best gift that I can give him as a mom is the gift of time. I might not always be able to give him the time to sit down and play, but I can give him the gift of a more comfortable existence. I can give him so many other things for myself as well too. Other things that I've done in terms of channeling these feelings has actually been exercise, and also buying a heavy bag. I can tell you honestly, that's probably one of the greatest ideas that's come across my plate, and that's been this idea of just hitting stuff. You don't have to have some grand structure, just a bag that sits against a wall somewhere. Even getting one of those goofy kids ones, something that's got a face on it. It sounds terribly violent, but it's that notion of hitting stuff is actually quite it releases an energy, and you can actually, you feel better from it actually. Another thing in terms of channeling this energy is this notion of reframing those feelings as well too. It's okay to address them up front as well too. It is okay to 110% okay to lose it every now and then. What is the most important thing though too is to be able to build yourself back up again, to get back up on the horse, for lack of a better phrase. I can say that if there's one thing that I can appreciate about myself is the fact that if I need to cry, I never apologize. It's if anything too, even when you're in a situation with a bunch of people, therapists or whatnot as well too, that is a way to communicate exactly how you're feeling at the moment, be it overwhelmed, be it angry. I found myself in a very awkward situation several years ago where my son was still eating orally, but he's never actually been hungry. That's something I've never been able to express to others on a base level. Like even as a baby, where you have that basic primitive notion of, you know, I'm tired, or I'm hungry, or I have to poop, or whatever the situation may be. He couldn't have cared less about food. We were in the NICU, I remember, just after he was born, and they had put him to the status of being fed on demand. And 5 hours later, I remember a nurse coming to me like, maybe we should just give him a bottle anyway. But that notion that kind of came out with professionals was that any child will eat when they're hungry. But yet I'm presented with this problem that he has had zero interest in food, and I can't just sit there and shove it into his face. And he kept losing weight, he kept losing weight, he kept losing weight, and it was actually quite a terrifying thing. And I'm sitting in a feeding session where I felt like I was not being heard at all. And finally, this is probably the first time I actually did cry in a session. I'm really sad to say that it took me that long, But it was after that that one of the doctors looked at me and said, "You really do want that feeding tube, don't you?" Yeah, of course I do. And it was actually within the next few weeks that they put in all the paperwork, and finally my son got a feeding tube, and he started gaining weight, and he looks a million times better than he did at the time. Oh yeah, you could see his skull and everything. It was just awful. But anyways, when it comes to when it comes to losing it, never ever apologize. Ask yourself a lot of questions through the day. If you're feeling that notion of being overwhelmed, how can I fight past this current feeling? And sometimes it's a matter of saying, I need to go out and I need to go drink coffee. That would be my thing. That would be my channel to get myself over a hump, whatever that may be from the day. But that notion also means to tap into your community and to say to a spouse or an aide or whatnot, I just need to go away for a few minutes and come back, and I will be a better person. Sometimes as well too, that notion of reframing whatever the current situation may be something completely ridiculous. The notion of turning on music and everybody has a big old dance party. Learn to let loose every now and then, to really just be silly. I imagine there's some science in there. I have not actually looked into it, but the concept of being silly and just having a sense of humor, whatever the situation may be, if there's anything to lighten your load just for the moment and just to help you to oh yeah, I should probably be breathing right now. If there's anything for a reminder of that, it's laughing. Knowing your limits early as well too. And I can't express how important that is. In working through social media, you often keep your ear to the ground in terms of where people struggle through various aspects of this life. And unfortunately, there are many aspects with which are so utterly terrifying because no one sees a way out of what their current circumstances. And all it would take would be for someone to speak up and say, hey, I need some help. And unfortunately, that's amounted to loss of life in many different experiences. But I just cannot express enough the fact that please, please, please know your limits, know them before you hit them, and seek out help wherever it may be. And sometimes that might actually be through emergency situations, be it calling 911, calling mental health assistance. They have a 24-hour hotline in Calgary. If you do need those numbers, any of the people involved in Smarty Skirts I know would be more than happy to provide that information for you, and I know that I would be happy to help you with that as well too. Sometimes as well too, one of the greatest things that can be with helping you through some of the emotions of the emotional roller coaster that is being a special needs parent is the idea of living, as what author Brene Brown calls, is living big, which is having boundaries, living with integrity, and living with generosity as well too. And that's the idea that sometimes being generous to yourself is one part of having these boundaries, and just being able to say, I need to stop my world for a little bit. I need to get off, and I will be better tomorrow. I will be better at whatever the situation may be. Living with hope is another thing that we don't often. We tend to inspirationalize. We tend to sensationalize. But I think that we need to kind of live with the idea of being surprised. These things, sometimes these milestones that our kids hit are just completely random moments that are just meant specifically for you. I had a relative of mine who fought very hard against the idea of who my son was, didn't understand it, didn't want to understand it at all. And I can't explain exactly what it was, but my son had decided at the time, I'm going to go out of my way and we're going to be best friends. Now, if you can imagine this, 8-year-old bum scooting kid just coming up to you and saying, "Hey, pick me up." Would you deny that? No, probably not. And so there were many times through that last visit where he insisted he was going to hold her hand while he was in his wheelchair and they're walking through the mall, or sitting in her lap and laughing and joking around and things like that. Plan to be surprised. You just never know what these kids are going to do in terms of, be it their infinite wisdom, be it their living on a different plane in terms of understanding. They're just marvelous, marvelous, marvelous kids. A desperation for milestones is really going to deprive you of the idea of living to be surprised. It's like I said, being back into the concept of just living organic, for those organic moments, not living organic, but anyways, living for those spontaneous moments, because they are out there. They're out there for you. One of the things about planning to be surprised as well too is this notion of the relationships that we have in our life. And I see a lot of times, especially when reading things like, I know many of us read the Mighty blog, and you see all these, to the person who denied me this or said this, that, and the other thing. And of course, yes, there will be those people in your life who are going to say completely ludicrous things. But we can't always live in the notion of being defensive. We can't always, I was talking to someone about this the other day, actually. You can't bring a switchblade to a Tupperware party, essentially. You can't live on that defense in a completely innocent situation. Now, sometimes we do need to advocate. Sometimes we do need to thicken that skin and really send a message saying that certain situations are not acceptable. But on the same end as well too, we can't always live on the level of seeing our kids as being different. We need to just respect that they think differently, but they're just at the very base of their existence, they're kids as well too. And if we give others who don't quite understand the concept of disability, we're going to essentially what I'm saying is that we're going to alienate friends, neighbors, those who don't quite get it. You're going to lose a lot more of the people that could be potentially supporting you. And really at the end of this as well too, I just wanted to say that tomorrow is another day. That's really what it comes down to, is we are going to have our ups, we're going to have our victories, we're going to have our trials, but every day is a new day. And seek out those people that do believe in you to help you keep going. You're doing a marvelous job. Have yourselves a wonderful evening, folks.